it.
Okay. Hi, this is Pam McDonald, your host for Banter and Beans, where our tagline is What's Brewing in Vermont, and particularly in Montpelier. We're bringing you bills that have passed this year that we're pretty sure a lot of you are not up to speed on, and we wanted to make sure we brought them to you so you wouldn't get surprised come next year when they're all implemented and you go, what? So Ben is
What
going
has
to
happened?
about Ben is going to talk about a bill that is of interest to him and all of us. And I'll turn it over to Ben. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Pat. As with many of these, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because we've got a bill review that we've done from Campaign for Vermont for this bill, like we do for many bills during the legislative session. So it's very helpful to kind of follow along with what's happening. And then, of course, we update the summary of the bill whenever something big happens, like it clears a committee vote or it goes to the floor or it gets signed by the governor, like this bill just did. So this bill started out as S-298 and then was signed into law as Act 126. And originally, this started out as sort of a bill codifying the federal election protections of, the Federal Voting Rights Act, essentially. This was supposed to be the state version of that. That's how it started out, because there was some concern that federal voting protections might get repealed under the current administration. It's a reasonable concern, but this bill really transformed into something else, and it did things, like define voter intimidation and processes for dealing with potential voter intimidation situations. So, like, say someone is being prevented, or there's someone standing outside of a polling place that is disincentivizing people from going in. They have a egregious or belligerent behavior, and they're discouraging people from entering that polling place. And so the attorney general can now hold people accountable for that. There was some concern that originally the bill had a private right of action component to it, and that was concerning to election workers because someone could bring a frivolous lawsuit against an election worker and they'd have to defend themselves. So now the enforcement for that is through the Attorney General's office to try to mitigate some of those potentially frivolous suits. And then there's a number of other things that this had done, just changes around the margins in terms of voter participation and voter engagement. And one thing that's significant that it does is it explicitly includes disability as a protected class of voters. So, like, there's more protections in place now for disabled voters, and in terms of what protections are available for them. Let's see. There's a number of other things that this bill does. I'm not going to go through all of them. Uh, but one significant one I want to call out, because we had engaged on this, and it's not really a voter protection thing. It is more of a administrative thing. But the Secretary of State had requested that the administration of candidate disclosure forms, so these are forms that candidates file when they file their paperwork to run for office. They had requested that the responsibility for those forms be transferred from the Secretary of State's office, which has had that responsibility since 2017, and that those forms be transferred to the Ethics Commission. And the problem with that is the Ethics Commission has two part-time staffers, and they were not going to be able to support questions related to those forms and get back to candidates. Like, there's over there's 150, 180 legislators running for office, plus any challengers. So there's probably easily over, 250 candidates, probably closer to 300 candidates running in any given election cycle. And the Ethics Commission just simply didn't have the staff to actually administer those forms and answer questions about them. So that was a big point of concern about that, the transfer of that responsibility. Not that the Secretary of State's office has a huge staff, but they do have 7 full-time people in their elections division, which is where the responsibility for those forms has resided since 2017. And so this created quite a kerfluffle because in the process of transferring this responsibility, there were not additional staff attached to it, at least not initially, in order for the Ethics Commission to take on this responsibility. And instead of adding those staff, the staff to support that work, the legislature chose to suspend the requirement for candidates to file instead. I guess I should say the requirement is still there in theory, but the penalties for failing to file got repealed, at least for this election cycle. So there's no penalty for failing to disclose your financial information when you file to run as a candidate. So that is problematic, and really, you could almost say that this is more of a candidate protection bill at this point than a voter protection bill. There are some voter protection provisions in there, but I think that this provision in particular kind of flies in the face of that. There are some expanded definitions of campaign expenditures, so that you can now include dependent care costs from your campaign fund. So again, that's sort of a benefit to candidates. So you can use your campaign funds to pay for family care. And then also the definition of political committee, or we might know them more colloquially as political action committees. Those are that definition was also expanded. So there's some things in here that relate to kind of the operations of campaigns and financial disclosures. And ultimately, at the end of the day, more of the meaningful changes are related to those than they are related to voter protections. So as with everything, we do all the bill summaries. We do a campaign for Vermont. We do a good, pros and cons list. So those are available here. We will make sure that the link to this summary is in the video description, so you can check that out. And then, of course, we also do an analysis, which is pretty similar to kind of the overview I just gave, but it gives a more context-aware description of the bill and kind of how to think about it and whether or not it's worth supporting. And then, of course, if we have taken a position on this bill, we will note that as well. And you can see that here. We did take a position on this bill, and there's a link to the press release in there. And of course, you can follow, any news coverage related to the bill, read the bill itself, and then see any of the other summaries that we've done. And there's quite a few of them. So that is the bill, Pat.
Great, thank you. I think it's worth noting that the Ethics Commission did ask for more staff,
Yes.
which was denied. And then there was a little bit of backlash for Christina Sibbert, who's the executive director. And she was pretty upfront and honest with them that they can't do it all, especially, I think, particularly since when they added the municipalities to their workload, which we supported. They just need more staff to do the work of the ethics committee correctly.
Yeah, I think one of the kickers for me is that the Ethics Commission had asked for 2 additional staff people going into the legislative session before this additional responsibility was even on the table.
Right.
And so the same week that this additional responsibility was getting added in the House, the Senate was cutting those 2 positions that the Ethics Commission had asked for. Ironically, at the same time, the budget that was passed in the Senate that same week, again, that this was being done on the House side, added two new positions to the Secretary of State's office. So they were adding more responsibility in the House while the Senate was cutting positions for the Ethics Commission and adding positions for the Secretary of State's office. And so that tells you a lot about how seriously they take these disclosure requirements and ethics and transparency more generally.
Right. Well, we know from our testimony and from following the ethics bill, neither the House nor the Senate nor the judiciary were too excited about putting ethics, this bill in place,
Yeah,
which is interesting in itself.
it is.
It's very sad. But anyway, thank you, Ben. I hope people will just check out all the bill summaries that have been done by Campaign for Vermont. I I was able to hear you better with my telephone, so I
Excellent.
held it up. But I was going to say one more thing. Oh, when you talked about a bill being an act, just for people listening, that means that the bill has been put into law. Until that time, it's either H or S for House or Senate. And when it's passed the whole process and the governor signs, it's given an act number. And that's why you see a bill being changed to an act, because it's become law. So there you go. We'll
Excellent.
seeing you. This is Pat McDonald and Ben Kinsley, and stay tuned. Bye.